How have you seen God's hand in your marriage?
So I think one of the biggest ways we've seen God's hand in our marriage is we have super, super different strengths and weaknesses, like especially spiritual strengths and weaknesses. I think that we were paired up because we can help each other with our strengths and weaknesses.
I think another aspect to that is that in this time in our life, we're not the most financially stable. And so there's lots of instances where we're like, I don't think we have enough money for whatever we're going to do. And then it hasn't been, a problem. We've been able to make it work. Just like the housing that we're in right now, has been such a blessing for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, and we can't forget the biggest thing, which is it's just crazy that we ended up meeting. I think that's the biggest God's hand in our life, or specifically in our marriage. It was like so many random things that had to happen that lined up to us meeting and then eventually us getting married. I think that's pretty important to us.
You answer first.
Early on in our marriage, marriage is most rewarding and difficult, I think. And early on in our marriage, we were going through a difficult time. And I was on my knees praying. And I don't even know how I felt the Spirit when I was praying because I was angry. And I didn't even think
Not me.
the Spirit could even touch my heart if I was angry. But it did. And so I think answers to prayers, right? In the moment that you need it. In the moment that you need it. Also, I think God puts people there for you. Like there was another experience where my sister was really helpful and helping me understand and model really good marriage. And also other people we look up to. One time we were at church, there was a panel of, I guess, experienced married people, and the youth were asking questions, right? And one of the bishopric, yes, you do. We say it all the time. Oh. One of the bishopric members said, whenever they would fight, they would say something like, do you want to get a divorce or do you want to go to dinner? And so that's something that we would commonly say to each other too. Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to get a divorce over this or are you hungry? Like,
It's been the same answer.
Let's be done.
Every time. So that's good.
Yeah. So people. So the Spirit answering prayers and other people. Yeah.
I'll go with what you think.
That's how you stay married. Just kidding.
Well, it probably was at the very beginning of our marriage because I'm a convert to the church and my parents were not members. And they were very accepting of my membership in the church, and they also were very agreeable to the fact that I wanted to be married in the temple. And in 1977, the year we were married, being married in the temple was the way to go if you wanted to get married in the temple.
Well, and for me, the other part of that is not knowing, I was 21 at the time. And I just kind of took for granted. I mean, Julia joined the church 4 years earlier, and we had talked about getting married in the temple, but I didn't recognize until much later, until I actually became a father, what sacrifice both her parents made as well as Julie made in order to do that. Because at the time, we couldn't do anything outside of the temple. There were no ring ceremonies, so we couldn't really celebrate other than we had a reception. But to think that she would be willing to come with me to Salt Lake City, we lived in Denver at the time, to leave her family in Colorado and willing to go to the temple, that she placed so much emphasis upon that. And the fact that she did is clearly something that our Father in heaven blessed our lives as a result.
How have you been spiritually strengthened by each other? Each of you answers.
You want to go first?
I feel like we kind of answered that, but no, you go first.
I
Give me
think
time to think.
oftentimes I'm really inspired by his spiritual strength. There's a lot of times that I kind of question things because I came up from a household that was very divided spiritually speaking. And so I constantly question and I'm like, I don't know. But Sam is just like unquestioning, always very strong faith. And so I admire that.
Oh, I know. You are so much more consistent than I am. I am so terrible at like daily scripture study, but you're like, no, we have to do this, or we have to pray, or like we have to do this thing. And when you're on that, you're like going to be very consistent, which is something that really helps me.
I think as we share spiritual experiences back and forth, you know, things that happen in our lives, things we think about, things we read in the scriptures, experiences with the Spirit, we've always been pretty open with that. Wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm, I would say
you
that.
have to agree.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
We're on video.
you're right. You are correct. Yes, spiritual conversations for sure.
They get pretty deep.
Mm-hmm, they do. And also just like individually, we, do our own study before we're married, while we're married, while we're, raising our children. And so we just share different inspiration, different thoughts that come up in those capacities, husband, wife, and parents. And we have a shared vocabulary. We have shared scriptures, shared beliefs, and that's really important.
And values.
And the most important,
Mm-hmm.
shared values.
Well, I'll go first. Julie has always been, and actually her family as well, before and her mom and dad didn't join the church in this life, but they were very interested in family history. And while it was just something that was kind of was a given in our house, and we just filled out family group sheets. But to see the spirit of Elijah work in Julie and her family, and to see the impact that ancestors have and the foundation that they built so that we could be where we are today, is something that I've been incredibly grateful for, to see her dedication to that aspect of the gospel.
A lot of my spiritual strengthening from Lee has actually come in later life because I have multiple sclerosis, and so I have some disabilities that I live with, and he has been extreme help and comfort and support to me with all the things that I have to deal with in life. So I think that, it's sort of just interesting that he's been there for me here at this point in our marriage.
How have you tried to follow Christ's example as husband and wife?
I think understanding and having patience with the other person is probably the biggest thing. Because when you're single, you're used to always your way being the right way. And that's not always true when you're married. Or maybe it is true, but it doesn't necessarily matter if you're right, just that you're unified together. So understanding the way the other person thinks and being patient with them the same way the Savior would be with people that thought differently than him, I think is very important in a marriage.
Yeah. I think the other aspect is thinking about your partner before you think about your needs. And Christ was constantly doing that. And I think there's times where I stop and I'm about to, maybe just dish up food for myself. But then I'm like, oh, wait, I have to think about, my spouse first. And I think that goes a long way.
Can I go? He's so much better at this than I am. So when I think of...
We'll have this on video.
When I think of Christ and his character, and he was living in service all the time. Like, Tom will deliberately, he's much more deliberate about serving I don't know if this is something like a goal that you have or something. It's like he's like is serving me every day. Like there's just always something. He's in service. That's how I would say.
I always have to get your ice cream for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is my love language though, which he knows, which is acts of service.
What was the question?
How do you see Christ in?
I'm not the best at it, but I do try to find ways to be more patient.
Also,
And wrap everything that I talk about into like a parable or a story so that you'll understand what I'm saying.
okay,
You gonna go with that?
I'm gonna go with that. For me, I also like I try to like, if I am struggling at all, I just try to like bring in Christ's love and the love that I know Christ has for Tom, and surface that when I feel like I might be lacking in love for others and compassion. So
one of the things, a picture that I remember was shared in an institute class that we took several years ago, and it shows a couple with God at the peak and husband and wife at the base. And the closer we get to God, the closer we come to one another. And it really is true that as we are currently serving together as missionaries at the BYU Library Family History Center, and having that opportunity to be together twice. I mean, we're together all the time, but Tuesdays and Wednesdays we're in the BYU Library, and to share that experience together is something that I cherish, and it's been greatly blessed us, especially at this point in our life.
I would agree that the time we have to serve together on this mission, this service mission to BYU Family History Library, is a real strengthening thing for us, for our marriage, and I feel that that we are able to work, together or apart. We get called to do separate things while we're there, but we go and come together, and we are able to experience like things together and meet the same people that we have come to enjoy so much as we have been there. People that are very interested in family history and have that spirit of Elijah too. So that is very uplifting for both of us, I think.
Research says that you need to tend to your relationship in order to keep the spark alive. In what ways do you tend to your relationship?
I think part of that goes with just everyday little things. So if you see something around the house, you just kind of do it. Or, you make sure to make it a priority where you talk about your day together. You ask questions, they point out something, you respond to it in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. I think making dates a priority is also super important, because things are so fun when you're dating, because you're like going and doing a ton of fun stuff almost every time you see each other. And if you stop doing that when you're married, then things get a little rocky and you forget that the other person's fun to be with, or things become mundane. But if you keep doing those things, then you remember why you got married and why things are so fun.
Date night.
Date night.
We go everywhere together. Pretty much.
That's sometimes not always good. Like sometimes it's good if you have a personality that needs some space. It's good to go places by yourself too.
Never mind. Strike my answer. No, but we do go a lot of places together.
Yeah.
So we hang out a lot. But
one of his
night
mentors,
is awesome.
one of his mentors was like, date your spouse. So that's been important. And Gallagher.
Oh, Ken.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important, taking the time
Mm-hmm.
to date. Now we're doing something really fun where every other week we get to plan it and it's a surprise for each other. So that's been kind of fun now that all of our kids are out of the house. Well, all our kids are adults. That's what I meant to say.
And we laugh a lot
Yeah.
at everything and everyone, especially the kids.
Again, we have like shared vocabulary, so those idiosyncrasies, those esoteric things that we have between each other or with each other. And then we do active things too. We try to stay active. We're in a pickleball league.
Of two. We're the only ones in it so far.
We're going to start a pickleball league.
If we're going to start a league, we should probably start saying yes when people come over and say, hey, you guys want to play?
Yeah, you want to join our league?
Yeah.
Oh,
But
that's a better answer.
I keep saying, no, we're almost done. I'm tired. I don't know. Because I'm afraid we won't know how to play with other people.
Well, as Julie alluded to in her previous answer, I have the opportunity to help her every day with things that I'm sure that I know she would rather do alone and have that independence. But having the chance to assist with meals and laundry and the things around our home is something that it actually enables me to pay back so much of what she had done for our family during the years that I was working.
I was just going to say that we have tended to our relationship in different ways, but I was the one that did a lot of things early on, all the things mothers have to do with sons, and he traveled a lot with his work, so I had the opportunity to do so much at home, and cooking and cleaning and laundry and all that fell onto my shoulders, and it's just kind of wonderful that he is willing at this point to do all of that for me as well, so that we have really shared together all this time that we've been married.
What do you do when you disagree? For example, in where you live, how to raise kids, and finances, etc.
I think this is something I've been working on in particular because I'm more of a naturally argumentative person. And so I think it's really important to know how to argue. So they say something that you disagree with, and you really try to understand where they're coming from and use language that's affirming so that they feel valid.
This is definitely something we're still working on. But the main thing that we said from day one of being married is we're never going to go to bed mad at each other. So it doesn't matter how late we have to stay up. Sometimes we've stayed up pretty late and we've figured out the problem, and then we're happy with each other before we go to bed. And I think that's been a good thing for us.
Usually just bottle it all up.
I think there's two paths for me. Like, for me, it's either I'm unconsciously responding and I haven't consulted the Lord first, and then, my ugliness can come out, not my best self, or it could be something completely different. So for us, it was interesting. I already had a daughter when we got married. And so it was really important that we were on the same page with parenting, right? That's super important. He was raised differently than I was. And so I went to my knees and prayed for just guidance on what to do about that, because he was coming in and I had already been the parent solely for 2 years. So it needed to blend fast. It wasn't like we could grow together with a brand new baby and learn together, right? It was like I was already doing my thing and we needed to come together. And it didn't have to be my way. It just needed to be what was going to work for our new family unit. And so I prayed about it, went to Barnes & Noble, happened upon this book that's just been amazing for us. Just resonated with our values. It was written by a Christian author, and that was really helpful. So agreeing on foundational things, like we're going to agree on certain values and that sort of thing, helps us filter when we're making decisions, right? Like, some things don't matter. It doesn't matter necessarily where we live. What matters is our values, which are, trustworthiness and honesty and the character things, character building. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's what I wrote. I wrote all that too. No, I think we had certain experiences growing up and knew that we wanted to do things differently, right?
That's right.
And I don't know. Luckily, we had the same or similar values and family, and I think that was like the most important thing was like family. And like how are we gonna raise the kids? Like, we knew we didn't want to be spankers because we didn't like that.
That's
So
true.
We decided not to do that, which is good. I don't know.
Communication.
I knew I didn't want to handle things certain ways, like maybe my parents did, and you were the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess maybe we lucked out that way.
She's always right.
And that's right.
I think for us, for me, I can only speak for me. Whenever we have a disagreement, it takes kind of me from, I need to remove myself from this circumstance so that things don't get overheated. And that as I contemplate the best path forward, then we can re-engage. And clearly the opportunity to pray together is something that enables Heavenly Father to help in solving those issues. And so I think, the just counting to 10, moving, kind of extricating myself and then helping to seek the help of our Father in heaven is clearly the best part of it.
I think in our situation that we have never, ever made very large decisions by ourselves, individually, saying we have to do this or we have to do that. We have always discussed everything and together come to the best answer to the dilemma, whatever it could be. So I think that communication in the marriage has been the key, it has been a very key success monitor for our relationship.
Yeah.
Why did you get married?
You want to go first?
So dating was so fun, and I think that's a good thing, but when it really came down to it, I was looking for a person who was stable and who was going to be a force for good in my life. And I think I really found that in you.
I think for me, I was looking for someone that was different than how I am, because I'm not a very emotionally driven individual, and it's hard for me to think outside of myself sometimes. And that's what Sam is. He's really good at that. And the other aspect to it was that it was just we both had individual, really strong feelings that this was what was supposed to be. And it was just kind of yeah, why not?
Yeah, we were really blessed because of that, because we were just dating and having fun, and kind of the conversations of if we get married slowly turned into the conversations of when we get married, we're going to do this. And then I ended up going to pray about it, and then just immediately the answer was definitely marry this person. And I know some people don't get it like that, but we were so lucky to get it.
Yeah.
I guess blessed to get it like that.
And then Sam told me, and I was like, oh yeah, I already knew a week ago.
Yeah, I was so excited. I was like, babe, guess what? And she's like, oh yeah, I already knew.
Tax purposes. I'll go first. So we got married, typically a little bit later than a lot of other folks do in church. So we were both 25. We met when we were 23.
That's not that old.
But I'm saying, everybody's getting married at 20 years old. Like our daughter. For me, I don't know. I had dated. I'd lived on my own, before my mission, and went on a mission. I'd done all the things. So, it was just, okay, the next step is, get married. And I didn't have to I didn't have to go through the whole dating thing again, and met Mom, and I was like, yep, that's it. Let's do it.
I never knew that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I didn't have anything else like I felt like I needed to do to get married. I didn't need to go date and find out what that was like. I lived on my own. Like I knew what it was like to not live at home, and it wasn't like. Plus, we dated. We knew each other for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I was around Michaela all the time, so it's like I didn't have to think like, oh crap, there's a kid involved. Like, and that was never a consideration anyway.
Yeah.
But so it just felt natural. It was time.
Yeah. I think at the time, for me, it was like, I'm just going to be honest, it was like checking off a box. And what I mean by that, I mean, it's definitely evolved and changed over the years, but what I mean by that is like I was groomed and taught in a home, an LDS home, and, we went to church and we sang, I love to see the temple, and I'm going there someday, and we learned about families, and we learned about Heavenly Father's plan, and we learned about, I mean, I knew that for me, I wanted to be a mom and have children, and that was, the single story that I was taught growing up, So I was checking off a box, kind of. I mean,
I should be on a card, like a Hallmark card.
But at the same time, like it was well thought out, like.
If I show up one day, like in the kitchen, you're just chilling, you're just cooking dinner. Wait, I'll be cooking dinner. You walk into the kitchen, and I've got a shirt. It's got an image of a checked box on it. You're gonna get what that means.
I will now.
I'm like your
I will
checked
now.
box.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was like,
That's an
okay,
idea.
it's like, return missionary, take me to the temple, check, kind of. I know that sounds, but it's part of the plan. Like I'm doing the plan. Like I'm good with plans. I'm good with goals.
It's all good.
But I think, I've grown and learned and like understand it so much more now. Like I get, God gives us families and to help us become what he wants us to be and who he wants us to be. And we learn from each other and grow from each other, and we become better because we're together.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it much more now than a long time ago, where I was just checking off a box in my mind,
The interesting thing, like maybe for both of us, like nobody taught us how to be married. At least for me. Like, I don't know. Like my parents didn't sit me down. Nobody sat me down. Like, this is what marriage is. This is how it works. Just had to wing it.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Well, I think we knew likewise that we had a really good friendship, that we were friends first before we started to date. And I think that the friendship we had early on wasn't a fly-by-night kind of thing. It was definitely a real thing, and we knew it. I went away to college while he went to the Air Force Academy to finish his schooling, and I was in school in Texas. And I think that we just knew that the communication thing that we shared, and the rapport and the friendship and the camaraderie, if you will, that we had together, that I didn't want to live without him. I wanted him to always be there. So getting married was the answer.
And like we long before we were dated, we went to high school together, and so we knew each other relatively well before we started dating. And I think that's been one of the greatest blessings, is that that foundation is something that we can fall back on all the time. And so having the opportunity to marry your best friend is something that doesn't come along all the time. So I appreciate being able to do that.
How did you know you were right for each other?
I think part of it was, like I said, I wanted somebody that was different than who I was in most aspects. And, he also has a pretty good work ethic. He knows what he wants to do, and I admired that, and I wanted somebody to be on my same level of intellect as well.
She's very smart. Yeah, I really wanted somebody that I didn't have to talk down to, and there's absolutely no way that I'm going to have to talk down to you just because you're so smart. And it's no one works harder than she does. When everybody's done working, that's when she's just started working. Or that's when you just hit your stride of working. Literally, I don't know anybody who works harder than she does. And that's something she says I work hard, but I don't work anywhere close to as hard as she does. And having somebody to motivate me to work hard has also been a good thing that makes us a good fit together.
Just kidding.
You're not going to go, I'll go.
I had a list of pros and cons. No, just kidding.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, back up. She did have a list.
And I was checking the pros.
When I met her, she told me about the list. And I was like,
In my defense,
what
in
is
Young
on the
Women's,
list?
It's like, it's one of the things you write down what you want.
I got to expose those check boxes like right away. Wow. Let's see. How do we know we were right for each other to get married or something like that? So, I mean, I was interested in Mom. I mean, like, we were just messaging back and forth on AOL. This is like before the internet. Carter was kind of the internet. I don't know. So, like, she was fun to message back and forth and stuff. That was cool. But we hadn't met yet. I saw pictures of her, which happened to be like 7 or 8 years old. But I was okay with it. I was like, okay, if she even looks a little bit like that now. She sent me high school pictures, by the way. If she even looks a little bit like that, that's cool. She's pretty cute. But we met at the Purple Turtle, not too far from here. A little burger joint that for some reason is still in business. So who was there? What's your version of the story? Who was there first?
You were.
I was there. Okay, whatever. So she walked in apparently. I remember it differently, but anyway, I saw her for the first time, saw her smile. And that was pretty much it. Like, yeah, that's
You
it.
knew I was right for you
Yeah.
from the moment you saw me?
Because again, we had kind of talked back and forth. I kind of knew a little bit about her. And then, I don't think we had talked on the phone yet. I don't remember, but. And then hanging out with her, we hung out there for a long time. We even got kicked out, kind of. And then we went hiking the next day. So we had like an official date. So that was it for me. She took a little longer to warm up.
I did take a little longer. I think
But you had
I had a checklist.
Michaela. You had a job. You had college.
Yeah. I had a lot
Yeah.
going on. And I think for me, it was like I wanted that answer from the Lord that this was right. I knew, our values lined up, and I enjoyed being around him and that sort of thing. And actually, true story, we were engaged, and then I called
First or the second
off
time? Oh,
the
okay. So the
engagement
first time.
just because I just had a lot going on. I was finishing my degree, and I was
I didn't know
a
any
single
better.
mom, and I was working. It was just a lot. And so I called off the engagement because it was just too much, and the timing just wasn't right. And then I wouldn't say that there was like this overwhelming like pillar of light that said, yes, marry him. But I definitely was prayerful about it. And I knew he was right for me because I couldn't imagine like a life, like moving forward, my life without him in it. Like I only saw him in my life moving forward. And
That's how I felt. I remember when you moved away.
yeah.
I was like, is that the last time I'm going to see her? And then I had this thought like I would have, like, down the road, 10 years from then, I was going to, like, run into her somewhere. And she'd be married and have another kid or two. And I would just be like, that sucks. I'm not happy for her. Yeah, I didn't like that image. That was terrible. So.
Well, I think that goes back to the friendship piece. And having gone to two different colleges, so we went to high school together. We were separated, so we actually both kind of dated a little bit while we were in college. But being able to see who was around us and who we were surrounded by, it for me just drew me back, knowing that my choice was Julie, and it became very clear because I had the opportunity to see other people around me.
Yeah, we just knew. I just knew that it was going to be he was the right guy. I just knew it in my heart. I thought if he doesn't know it, then so be it. But I knew that he was the right guy. So I was functioning on my intuition, my confidence in myself, and what I knew that he would be the guy I wanted to marry.
If you could give advice to someone who has yet to be married, how can they know that they are ready for marriage?
Oh, that's a good question.
Let me see.
How do you know you're ready for marriage?
You just know. It's like, do you have any doubts about this? Are you know, it's just, you just know with all of your soul almost. It's just like, this is my person. You know, you have to have at least a little bit of time together, you know, in person. But and I think the important part is that when you're dating, your eyes are really open. You're like, is there any problems here? And if there isn't, you know, for a certain amount of time, then.
Right. You have to be pretty aware of red flags when you're dating somebody. But I don't think there's a specific time. Like, I wouldn't be able to say this is how much time you should date somebody. We were thinking when we were dating that we always made fun of the people that got married really fast. We're like, those people that got married really fast, they're just so rash and making bad decisions. And then, or we were like, we have to date for a year before we think about getting married. And then it was 4 months in, or I guess it was 3 months in. That's when we started thinking about it. And then 4 months in, that's when we got our answers. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a super good answer to that question. I think it's just a feeling, and like you feel right with the other person. And it's not just some physical connection, because all of that fades. It's like a really deep emotional connection with the other person.
Yeah, it's kind of like you make your choice and then you just kind of stick with it.
Right. That is true too. Like, I couldn't have chose better, but I have no desire to choose again. This is the person that I want to stick with. And marriages aren't like, I don't know if I fully believe that marriages are like meant to be together, except for ours. I think marriages are built. Like, you have to put the effort into marriage to make it work. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how made for each other you were, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. You don't.
You can't.
No, you can't. I think that's from a show we just watched.
Yeah.
I don't know how you know you're ready. I mean, as long as if you get to experience what the other person's values are, and then look at yours. Okay, here's mine. Here's hers. Like, okay, yeah, those match up pretty good. Like, I don't know. I think there is a foundation. If you have a foundation, and I think that's the values. It's like, how do you want to raise the kids and things like that. Like, if you have those values, then I don't know. That's kind of a good enough foundation. I think you have to figure out everything else after that. You know?
Yeah.
And it helps, it helps to know people that have had successful marriages. So like my friends that you mentioned, just a lot of people that have good marriages, like watching them interact together, you know, and just kind of see like, yeah, I want to have at least a part of that.
Yeah. I would answer it and agree with exactly what he said. What what comes to mind is this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's by Jesse Owens, where I'm not going to quote it exactly. I'm just going to.
That's okay. Go ahead and say it, and then I'll quote it exactly after you're done.
I think the foundational principles, like if you have those, right? Like you know, have similar religious beliefs. You are attracted to each other. You are interested in each other. You enjoy being with each other. You know, some of those foundational things. And then, like you mentioned, with the values and principles, if those align, how can you go wrong?
Well, I think in today's world, I think people wait too long. They think that everything has to be perfect in order to get married, and that's far from it's never going to be perfect. And so much of building upon a foundation is getting to understand who someone is, how they feel. I think it's important to recognize their religious affiliations and to have some commonality there, or at least an understanding there. And what do they expect in a family? I think it's really critical to have discussions, but I think people think that they have to wait until everything's in perfect place in order to do it. And I think it's really, once you have a clear understanding of one another, and so much of what you can do over time is you can just learn to love someone even more as you spend time with them.
One of the things that we have always had between us is that we've liked a lot of the same things. So I just feel like we've always had that feeling that, you know, you just don't want to let that person go off to another place or with another person or whatever it turns out to be, that you want to spend your life with them. So you have to get them while you can.
What is the key to success in marriage?
I think just don't stop trying.
Mm-hmm. As soon as you give up on your marriage, that's when your marriage is going to fail. Both of our parents have, well, are pretty bad examples of marriage. Mine are, I wouldn't say my parents are bad examples of marriage, but they've had a fairly rocky marriage. And so both of us having bad examples of marriage just see that, like, I don't know, marriage is not an easy thing. And as soon as you give up on it is when it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communication.
Mm-hmm. Patience.
With each other and with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Just one word. That's it.
Knowing you don't have to figure out and solve everything and talk about everything right then in the moment. It's totally okay to, like, you know, go in separate rooms for a little bit, chill out, come back, talk about it later. Yeah.
And love. I think, yeah.
Oh yeah, love.
Just
and
communication.
Like something, again, like a foundation that's greater than yourselves. So like the gospel, God, Christ, right?
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Your wife is always right. I mean, just leave it at that.
So true it is, but I will say that communication together and being open about things and discussing what your decisions are before you make a decision, and not presupposing that the other person has exactly the same thoughts that you do, so that you know they have their own thoughts and you discuss what they are, and then concerns can be addressed and you'll come to the right decision together.
And I think it's you hear this a lot, but don't ever go to bed mad at each other, because
It only gets worse.
It just festers. But being able to talk to one another and communicate is so important. And not only does it help resolve issues, as you're doing it, it further strengthens the relationship that you have. So communication, patience, and trying to show love, and then going back to that triangle. The closer you get to one another, the closer you get to Heavenly Father, and that clearly helps.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.